unlike a lot of people, I grew up really immersed in classical music and experimental music. My mom's a pianist, and my dad is a computer scientist, and with really nothing in the middle. And it was the Beatles who really opened my eyes to a much larger idea of what music could be. I think if I weren't a composer, and actually even if I were a composer, I would love to find somebody who would pay me just to sit and read. Because ever since I was a little kid, I don't know why, I just love to learn about almost anything. And I think I'm happiest, even more than listening to music, I think I'm happiest reading and letting my mind be drawn by whatever I'm reading. And I could do that all day. One of my guilty pleasures actually is solitude. So, I work at the MIT Media Lab, which is kind of a 21st century lab. And over the years, a lot of my work, partly because it involves technology, partly because I often work in opera, I do pretty large projects. And so I build teams that, I always have a team of about 15 people, graduate students and researchers who I work with on projects. And then when I do a big project, it could be 50 people or 60 people or 70 people. And so I'm often sharing ideas when they're very early on, earlier than I normally would. But the reason I got into composing originally is that I love to be alone with my ideas and to be in a place where I can let anything come to mind that needs to, and I can let it follow whatever course it needs to. I can try things, and I can do all that without sharing it with anybody, and iterate just with myself. And so I guess my guilty pleasure is that I love doing that, even though these days I have to fight to have that time for myself. The people I would really love to have collaborated with as a group would be the Beatles, the Beatles, I grew up, unlike a lot of people, I grew up really immersed in classical music and experimental music. My mom's a pianist, and my dad is a computer scientist. And with really nothing in the middle. And it was the Beatles who really opened my eyes to a much larger idea of what music could be, and still remains so. So to have done a project with the Beatles would be a real dream. But it ain't gonna happen, unfortunately. There's so many people I admire and am interested in who I'd like to have dinner with. I think maybe right now I'd pick Arnold Schoenberg. I wrote an opera about Schoenberg recently called Schoenberg in Hollywood, about his time after he left Europe and ended up in the most foreign place to him, sunny California, after he'd come from brooding, difficult Europe in the 30s. Boy, I'd love to sit down with him and ask him if I got his character right, and I'd love to find out all the things that I couldn't quite ascertain in my own research and writing my piece. Almost everything is hidden in Boston, and it's also things are very decentralized. So I think Bostonians don't necessarily like to tell you about their favorite places. MIT is, of course, a great science and technology institute, but it has one of the world's great public art collections. You'd never know that. It's easy to find, it's well documented. You can online, you can see it, but there's so many amazing things. There's one collection of buildings, which is actually, it's the Center for Theoretical Physics. And it's a collection of kind of older, maybe early 20th century buildings that there used to be a large courtyard. And to make the physics center, they actually closed it off, built a big glass roof, and they commissioned Sol LeWitt, the great conceptual artist, to it was one of his last works, to design the entire floor of this place. But the floor is like this. What's it the size of? It's like, my God, it's like the size of an airline terminal. It's gigantic. And so he designed this gorgeous geometric colored, quite intricate pattern on the floor. And as a lot of Sol LeWitt's works, he created the instructions for how to create this artwork, and then a team of people came in and made this. But it actually is the floor of this gigantic center. I had done a project with Penn and Teller, actually, the magicians, and I did a magic opera where we discovered a way that just by moving your arms, the electricity that your body sends out could be measured in the room. So there was something called a sensor chair, where Penn actually, at the beginning of the opera, the little magic trick, he demonstrates it, and then the whole trick is about spirit mediums from the 19th century, and Teller gets tied up inside a tent, and he ends up playing the sensor chair anyway. And so, but anyway, it turns out when we did the premiere of that in Las Vegas, Prince's, the artist Prince, his manager was there. And so he actually called me up the day, found my number, called me up the day after the performance and said, I manage Prince, and I was at this show last night, and I saw you had this chair that measured how you move. And, I told Prince, and he was really interested. And, we wanted to know if you wanted to create a line of musical furniture. And actually, if you wanted to ask me the stupidest thing I ever did, I said no. I said, I'm interested in a lot of things, but I don't really want to make a line of musical furniture. And so then the guy said, okay, but let's talk, because this idea of being able to gesture and have, sophisticated sound made is really interesting. We should be able to find something. And so sure enough, they got back to me and said, Prince is just about to start his next big European tour. Would you like to design something for the tour? And so sure enough, we did. We went, and what Prince's idea was, he got the idea immediately that just by moving and just by gesture, you could make complex sound. So he took this mannequin, was actually a female mannequin, and he said, can you put the sensors in the mannequin so that I can start my show by dancing with the mannequin and moving my hands all over the place, and have the whole song be triggered by that movement. And sure enough, we did it.